It's just a little after 1, and we have the agenda in front of us, committee. Thank you all for coming on this beautiful day. Call to order and the agenda as presented. Looking for adoption, please, committee members. Councillor Seegers, Councillor Lutz, all in favor of the adoption of the agenda as presented. Thank you. We'll go then first to no appointments, delegations, or correspondence. We'll go to the committee minutes and reports. Previous committee from June 27, 2018 for receipt. Thank you. Receipt. Councillor Lutz, thank you. All in favor of receipt. Any questions on that information and or business arising? Okay, committee, seeing none then, that was easy. Let's move on to 7.1, Engineering and Operation Services Overview and Activity Report.
Move for receipt.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, thanks. All in favor of receipt. Thank you for receiving the report, and thank you to the staff members, one of which sadly will be leaving us. Sad to hear, for preparing that report. Any questions on the information that's presented here of the committee members? Councillor Seegers.
Thank you. On page 9, under engineering, I noticed that we've got the Stage 2 Liquid Waste Management Plan update, KWL, and then the Selma Park and Davis Bay Sewer Functional Plan, KWL. And then we're looking at a sewer modeling and funding project, and we're issuing an RFP for that. Given that we've got a good component of the project already with KW, like Kerwood Liddell, do you anticipate that that's how it's going to go?
Again, it's hard to determine this at this time because, again, we haven't got any proposals back in. So, but they do have a bit of an insight on our needs, and we're hoping that we would get something from them. Yes.
Okay. And then the next one is Trail Avenue alignment and safety improvements. Say received cost estimate is under review and staff exploring alternatives to match current funding. Can you give us an update on that?
Yes, staff have been working with the consultant to basically break down the project to components. Again, we do have a cross-section that was brought forward way when the project started, and then we had public consultation, and after that there was components that were added. So we're looking at those components, putting a cost to them, and we'll be coming back to council to see if we want to eliminate some of those components to bring the price down.
Okay. Okay, next page, page 10. I noticed in most of them you indicate when the RFP is closing, but under the Wharf Avenue Sidewalk, Cowrie and Dolphin design, it was issued July 6th. What is the date that that one is closing? Do we know?
I'm sorry, I don't know offhand.
Okay. There's the one below that says July 10th, closing the 31st. So I'm assuming it's maybe around the same date. I don't know if we give more time for different projects or not. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I believe those dates are close. 31st, yes.
Mm-hmm. And then a little further down, it talks about active transportation. And there was the engineers on e-bikes. It was a lot of fun. And I think looking at doing it again to do some of the other routes in the municipality. So I think it's open to whoever'd like to join. Right? It was a good time. And we actually saw some of the issues. I think Serge was on one of the bikes. He had to duck under some of the trees on some of the bikes. So it's quite the route. That's all my questions. Thank you.
So, Darwin, the question that you mentioned, the answer to the question from Councillor Seegers that you mentioned about the Trail Avenue work that needs to be done and the additional components that were requested from the public, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Are any of those additional components, do they have pieces to them that could be, in a sense, funded by gas tax in future or something like that? I mean, those are the kinds of things, because of the request made. Generally, they're sidewalks and bike lanes and things like that. And I'm not sure what else was requested, maybe a safety request, but yeah,
we haven't looked at any type of gas tax or any type of funding at this point.
Yeah.
What we're trying to get a handle on is what those component costs are.
Okay.
And then, by reducing the scope of the work or eliminating those components. But once we find out those costs, we'll have a better idea, and then we'll be presenting to council.
Okay. I'm hoping that and I'm sure this is, within the staff capacity and focus, but that the discussion of the changes to those particular requests does not, because of the costs of what we're dealing with contract changes and that. Is somebody having trouble hearing me? You can't hear me? Okay. I was just looking this way, so I guess through that off, I'll speak forward. That the requisite new changes that have to be made and the decisions the staff have to make based on the available funding doesn't change the project substantively. It's something that we're dealing with, so,
That's correct. We're finding with all the costs that we're receiving, they're escalated. Other components that we spoke to, the SCRD as well, they're finding that. So we're going to be looking at how we can maintain and continue with those projects, maybe by reducing the scope or doing something, but of course, continue with the projects as we move along, yes.
Okay. Let's see what happens, because I know that once we make changes to Trail Avenue, we want to make sure that we do it right and that it's a proper feeder road and main road for a number of years.
Do it once.
Yeah, do it once. Yes, exactly. Thanks for being on the same page there, Darwin. Councillor Wright.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I take it that you didn't break the project down and ask for separate prices on some of these things when you went to tender. Is that correct?
Are you referring to Trail Avenue?
Yes.
We didn't go to tender at this point. We are dealing with the consultant's cost estimate.
So it's just the consultant's cost estimate?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm assuming that's a little bit of a suggestion. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just thought I'd maybe add to the
thank
question you asked on the funding side of things, because there are
Yes.
some challenges with this project, and actually a lot of projects. On this one particularly, it's actually DCC funded, so it's 99% DCC funded. So really to use an alternate source of funds could do, but it wouldn't really be appropriate on the basis that it's DCCs that are meant to fund this project because it's a result of growth. So we should be using DCC funds and trying to reallocate those projects and try to time them better if we need to increase the budget here, reduce a budget somewhere else. And just to let you know on the gas tax, all of the gas tax money that we anticipate getting for the next 5 years has already been accounted for in the budget. So again, if we were to reallocate it here, some other project would have to be eliminated. So just want to give that heads up. So we definitely have some funding challenges with this project facing us.
Yeah, I've never seen before gas tax money committed so much ahead of time as I do now. So that's why I asked those questions. So it's earmarked ahead of time now. So usually it came in and then there was decisions made as to how it was spent. But interesting, we have a lot of demands on the money that's available to us. So be interesting to see how that project plays out. Any other questions on the information presented there? Okay, seeing none then, let's move on to 7.2. This is something we asked for a number of months ago, and I'm sure committee members are glad to see. Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Lutz and Seegers, first and second, all in favor of receipt. Thank you. Okay. Did anyone, Doug, you want to speak to this then? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So our understanding of what was asked for, and it became the challenge for us, was to look at the current operating costs of the Water Resource Center relative to the pre-construction budget. But as you'll see in the on page 15 of the agenda 2 of the report, when Deloitte did their review of the operating costs, they were looking at the first 12 months of the operation. We were unable to find a definitive operating budget for the plant prior to construction. So there really has been no way to look at the project and compare how we're doing today relative to what was expected prior to construction. So what we ended up doing is, and Deloitte did this, is they produced a 5-year forecast, basically based on the first year of operation and budget, and then extend that out 5 years. So you'll see most of this report is looking at how the operation is working relative to its first year and what was forecast going forward. So unfortunately, I'm not sure the report quite did what you were hoping for, but unfortunately it appears that information is not available. There were some pre-contract or pre-construction budgets done, but as you can see, as I quote on page 15 there, they didn't include some of the amortization, didn't include some of the administration costs, didn't include some other functions or scope in the project. So it was certainly a challenge to compare to what was anticipated prior. So based on that, we did do an analysis of just how the resource center is doing relative to that initial forecast. And for the most part, I think it's meeting the forecasted numbers. I think the numbers have been changing, but I think that's been a challenge of a new plant when you start looking at, chemical costs, hydro, even some of the staffing levels. It's going to take a couple of years before these numbers kind of start to see a trend and start to balance as they start to learn what's happening here. And certainly in talking to Angela about the plant and like chemical usage, it can vary depending on season, what's going into the plant. So until we see a history, it's going to be certainly very challenging to come up with a definitive budget and know if we're on. But it certainly seems to be we are. There's been an unusual number of call-outs. I think that's something that needs to be addressed, just looking at either staffing levels or whether we extend, this is certainly up to Darwin, changing the staffing hours or looking at what some of the issues are. And as I said, certainly the chemical ones, I think we've indicated that the chemical use seems to be going up, but it's unknown at this time as to why. It could be a number of factors playing into that we need to sort of get a handle on. But otherwise, I think the plant's running as anticipated, certainly from the original forecast that Deloitte did a couple of years ago. And it's just a matter of, I say, building up a history and looking for trends, I think, more than anything else. So if you have any specific questions about the report, I'm willing to answer.
Thanks to your staff for doing this report that was requested, and it's unfortunate there's no baseliner. Councillor Lutz. Okay, I have Councillor Lutz. It's unfortunate there's no baseline as was done in 2011 for the previous iteration. So, but we have some questions and the report's in front of us, and I was wishing, I guess now that we know what's happening, that Angela would have fixed the chemical problem before she left. That'd be a goal, right? Please fix that before you go. Councillor Lutz.
Thank you, and thank you for this report. It's been very interesting reading. I'm wondering if you could break down what the contracted services and rentals are, and if there's any possibility for any of that to be done in-house.
I unfortunately don't have to.
It's certainly predicted to rise, so quite substantially. Pardon? Perhaps, yes. Angela?
Well, rentals only occur when there's an emergency and we don't have a backup pump or that sort of thing. As for contracted services, we rely pretty heavily on them for electrical work, hauling our biosolids, that type of thing. So there will always be high contracted services costs because the operators are not millwrights, and we don't have the proper tools to take a pump apart and put it back together again unless you're talking about a very basic chemical pump.
Sure, yeah, of course.
Can I ask about the hauling of the biosolids? Is that a specialized truck and contract, and what percentage of those dollars is for hauling?
I don't know the total annual cost of that, but yes, it's a specialized bin truck with rollers on it, and other companies do have similar trucks. They're standard. We use Graco because they're on the coast here, but we could always put that out to RFP.
Okay, no follow-up to that, considering the suggested option, Councillor Lutz? No, not at this time. Okay, great. Any other questions? It's interesting that there's two categories, that one after the other, that have been identified as going up quite a bit over a number of years. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On page 20, and it's a 13% increase in power. The last statement there, they suggested, we're talking about the ultrafiltration process, which is not typical of other treatment plants. And I understand that the ultrafiltration gives us the potable water. What would would it be possible to say we don't need potable water? I mean, we don't have a list of customers lined up to buy it. So if we decided to alter the filtration system and not use the entire filtration system, could we reduce the level, the quality of the water and reduce our costs?
You could, but you do have to meet those below 10 for total suspended solids and below 10 for CBOD. Unfortunately, those limits were set by Urban Systems, and the district agreed to them. They actually asked for those limits to be that low. They used to be below 25 milligrams per liter, and now it's below 10. So without the filters, you would not meet those requirements. So you would then have to extend the outfall line.
Okay, thank you.
So that would be an extension of the line, would be an additional cost. That's an interesting piece to it, because obviously the changes that were made in the additional amount that Councillor Wright asked about were in reference to a potable water piece that we would be considering to utilize. So if we're not utilizing that option, and/or we're not sure where we will go with that, it's an interesting question in terms of the usability of that particular option now and going forward.
Yeah.
Mr. Cooney.
Again, if I may, as Angela mentioned, our regulations from environment call for a 10 degree instead of a 25, so we have to meet those. Also, we have a different system than regular systems because, again, of the small footprint of our plant. We don't have lagoons where we can, filtrate out and do that and have nature take its course with the chemicals. We have to do that all mechanically, hence the cost for electricity and chemicals.
Okay, so it's the smaller size plant and things like that. Oh, okay. Speaks to location in a sense. Councillor Wright.
Also, further on page 20, second paragraph from the bottom, it says for 2018, consumables are tracking in excess of the forecast and budget. Do we know what the forecast is for where it might end up?
Consumables, I'm assuming, means supplies, and a lot of those costs are spare parts. The plant has almost every spare part that it needs now. So I would assume that we would not have high costs there for the next 5 months.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Seekers.
Thank you. So I have a few questions. When the costs were reported in here, were they separated out from the cost of septage and from collection?
I'm not sure of that.
Yeah, I believe this is simply for the treatment plant itself, so collection costs are not included in these at all.
Okay. And then you indicate that cost for chemicals, or the expense for chemicals has gone up. So do we know, has the cost gone up or has consumption gone up?
I believe consumption's gone up. We've actually just recently got a new RFP, so our cost per unit for chemicals is actually going down. So we're actually hoping to see it come in close to, or not too much above budget this year. But I think the primary issue has been consumption of chemicals.
Yes, that's true.
Okay. Then what about the impact of we did sign a contract earlier where the costs for treating the biosolids went up. So how is that taken into account inside of this? That's in the contract services, that's where we're seeing that?
Yes.
Okay. And there are two references to flows in this report. One is on page 15, where Urban Systems projected an increase in the average daily flow from 2,100 at the start of the year to 6,300 by the end of 2035. So 5.7% growth rate annually. But then if you go to page 21, it says some potential reasons for higher costs are because the volume of treatment being done is greater than expected. So are we going up more than 5.7% per year?
I'm not sure how much we're going up. We're at about 2,200 right now. That's the average during the dry season. There is some inflow and infiltration. And we've just calculated the filters use a lot of water to flush. And with the higher turbidity we're experiencing right now, which we think is coming from Dusty Road because we lost the use of one lagoon, that's actually contributing a large amount of flow to the plant because it goes back to the primary tank and gets treated as well, all the flushing water. So you're at 3,600 cubes per day.
Okay. So we should look at where that is inside of the projections that were actually anticipated.
Yes, I don't know if they calculated that number because the flow meter is before the primary. So I think they just calculated what's coming in from the collection system, not what's being recirculated back and has to be treated.
Okay, so we need some more clarity around that piece. Then on page 19 at the top, it says, to better understand the intricacies of the plant, a process specialist may be contracted to review the entire operation. We had a contract with Veolia, did we not, around that? Has that been continued, or where are we at with that?
Yes, we still have a contract with Veolia. We're looking at other options. We've asked Veolia for a cost to do a nice intrinsic review
Right.
of our operations, all of our emergencies. We also have another proposal from a company that can provide that same service. So we're waiting to get this second proposal, and then we'll do a review and look at the scope and then
Okay.
have somebody come in.
Sounds good. And then I was curious, it was interesting, Doug's comment that we couldn't use the Maple Rinders projections. I thought there was something indicating what the anticipated costs would be going forward. So it's too bad we don't have those. Thanks.
Any thoughts on those or none? Okay. Councilor Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess a caution, okay, I would be very careful using a company that did the installation to do verification of a system. It would seem to me that if I did the install and then you brought me back to do a consultant report to tell you how well it was operating, I could probably give you the answer right now. But anyway, just a caution for you, okay? And you may find that their price is considerably lower because they know the system. And another caution for you. Anyway, having said that, under financial implications, it says, this is on page 21, if the operational performance of the plant continues, we can anticipate increased operational costs that would require additional funding. Any orders of magnitude guess about how much that would be? Are we looking at a $10,000 increase, a $50,000, $100,000? I'm just trying to get a sense of how big that might be.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, unfortunately, I don't really have that number. That will be part of the discussion for the 2019 budget to look at the trends of costs. And as Ms. Smith said, there's some that maybe looks like they're trending upwards, but perhaps they had higher expenditures the first part of the year. So maybe it's incorrect to assume that all of them are going up. So part of our 2019 budget will be to look at those things.
Councilor Seegers.
Thank you. Thank you for your time here. Good luck in your future endeavors. And then to staff, given that Angela will be leaving us, we require a level 4 operator?
That's correct, yeah. Our plant is a level 4, and we will be going out to seek another level 4. We do have some ideas on how to adjust and maintain our credibility. Exactly, yes.
Okay, as we should be replacing, so good for continuing with that. And again, it looks like we have no other questions on this report. And did Angela, you want to add more to it? Your light's on?
Oh, I just wanted to say thank you. It was nice working with all of you.
Yeah, thanks, Angela, for all your work with our new plant. You're a really key component and staff member there. Thank you. So the report is, been given to us, and the minutes and the questions and some of any recommendations coming from this will go forward to council, and it's now in the public realm, so that's helpful. It's unfortunate it looks like a higher amount to run the plant than perhaps a baseline may have indicated previously with some other comparables, because that money could be used for other projects, sewer-related and/or other projects within the district. So, because we know over 10 years how much a larger amount would mean 10 times that amount that it's been over the budgeted or what it thought was to be. So you could put a lot of roads and sidewalks, et cetera, in with that. Thanks for the report. Let's move into 7.3. Receipt, thanks. Second, Councillor Seegers, all in favor of receipt. And we have number 2 here with the recommendation and the fairly clear report. Did you want to speak to this, Mr. Kootenai, at all?
Yes, every year we celebrate the LGBTQ two community by raising the flag, and staff have looked at 4 different locations for a rainbow sidewalk. We like number 4. It's very prominent. It's right in the middle of our community. I'm sure there's more areas that a person can look at, but that would be our recommendation, and that we could proceed.
Okay. Any thoughts from committee members on that? You'll move it. Second, thank you. This is an idea whose time has come, and a lot of other communities are doing it. And I think the council members that keep in touch with other communities, which a number of us do through Facebook and otherwise, know that it's happening all over. So thanks for taking the initiative. First and seconded, all in favor? Okay. Thanks, everyone, for those number of items and some good discussion. I'll look to adjournment. Councillor Seegers, Councillor Lutz, all in favor of adjournment? Thank you. Thanks, everyone, for coming. Any questions? Seeing none?